Zach, we are back, and we are looking at moves to make or not. This is going to be a different spin on the moves to make videos we normally do. This is going to be a mix of all of the variations we've had of these videos, grading trades, what moves are we looking to make, what moves are we looking to not make. Take your pick of variety. We're smashing it all together here and calling it a day and doing something that little bit different. So how this will work, I'll be sending a player or picks. Zach, you'll be sending a player of picks. Then we'll decide if those are moves we're making. If we're making it, we'll talk about why. We'll talk about maybe if we like the players or dislike the players, the values, etc. And we'll put some trades together using our mock trades concept as well. So this is going to be a blast. It's going to be a little different. Let us know what you think of it down in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoy it. And if you want to make more moves with us, check out patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in on that 7-day free trial with us and see what we can do to better your Dynasty team and enjoy Dynasty Fantasy Football that much more. But with all that said, Zach, all the promo in the books, let's get to the content that people came for. The first deal we have on the docket here in this formatting, it's Superflex League, 12-team PPR, start 9, no tight end premium. In this deal, I'm allegedly sending Jordan Addison. Zach, you're sending the 24 202 and a 25 second. Is this a move you're making? Is this a move I'm making? I'll kick it to you first here. All these trades, by the way, are pulled from Fantasy Calc or Dynasty Daddy, just off of complete trades that have happened out in the wild. So, Zach, are you making this move to go get Jordan Addison, sending the 202 and the 25 second?
This to me is a move not to make. And I've been on the record multiple times saying I'm just not that interested in Jordan Addison. I'm not too sure why people still are. I know they got a little taste of what happened his rookie year, but there's just so much working against Jordan Addison, even replicating the type of year that he had last year. Not to mention a rookie quarterback, not to mention Justin Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson will be back at some point, probably missed the first 4 or 5 games of the year, maybe 8. But to me, that doesn't really ascend Jordan Addison to a position to where I'd like to move 2 assets for 1. The only thing I can say that working for this is it is a start 9, so you would like to consolidate and get better assets. However, I like what I can get in the draft at 202. That's typically your Trey Benson, Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, Jalen Polk if you want to be adventurous. That's kind of your territory there. You could even have a league mate slip on one of Vlad McConkey, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas Jr. They typically don't fall to the 202, but it would really only take one league mate picking somebody they shouldn't ahead of that, like an Xavier Legette or Ricky Pearsall, to bump one of those guys down. So I don't think I would make this move for a Jordan Addison. If I was targeting a player, and I'm going to tell you right now that the value of the 202 and a 25 second won't get this done, but if I was in this format trying to consolidate 2 or 3 assets into one and looking at a similar type player, I would maybe target Devonta Smith more as opposed to Jordan Addison. I think it would take a lot more to get that deal done. But, that's what I'm doing there. I'm targeting a team's wide receiver 2, the second or third option in that passing offense. Although I do think the ceiling is much higher for Devonta Smith than Jordan Addison. But that's just a player I'd much more prefer in every which way you spin this type of scenario. So I am admitting it would take more than the 202 and a 25 second. Like, what the heck do I add to that? Does it take 3 seconds? I still don't even know if that gets it done. But you get the point. You get the point I'm trying to make there, Bob.
Yeah, I think if you made that a 25 first instead of a second, I think you're probably getting in a conversation for Devonta Smith. And I like that pivot a lot as well. Known Jordan Addison hater at this point on the channel. Been talking the last few weeks about avoiding him or possibly even selling. And while I like the concept of selling, I don't like selling at this value. I don't think, being that it's a start 9, like you discussed, this doesn't really move the needle for me. Getting the 202 and a 25 second back, as much as I think that value is pretty decent for Jordan Addison, you could have gotten more out of it maybe, but whatever the case is. If I'm also looking to consolidate and get a player that moves the needle that much more. I'm looking to pile onto Jordan Addison to go get somebody as well. Can I tier up at wide receiver instead of, going maybe backwards or somewhat staying the same, but yes, you get an extra pick on top. Looking at my rankings, can I tier up from Jordan Addison to get to a Zay Flowers or even as high as a DK Metcalf? Can I pile on a pick to that to just get somebody who I think is going to be a little bit more of a solid contributor this year, doesn't have as much competition or question, I should say, in that wide receiver room, the quarterback room? Can I pile on to Jordan Addison to go get one of those players? Or like you said, can I pile onto him and go all the way up to get Devonta Smith? Jalen Waddle is another player in that range I'd like to go after. Brandon Ayuk. Can I do something along those lines? Happy moving off Jordan Addison here, but this is not a move I'd make. I'd look for something else. If I'm moving Addison, I would love to get in the range of a first round of value if I'm just moving Addison. But I think Addison has enough value where you can do that concept of let's pile on top of him and go get one of these top or higher up players we discussed, even a Nico Collins. I'd like to go and get as well. I think you can get him because I think his value is dipping a little bit with all the questions there are in Houston. Is that kind of a concept you'd be open to, taking or thinking about doing as well, piling onto Addison to go get one of those top wideouts?
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would prefer any of those options. Those guys are maybe still number 2 options. Brandon Ayuk, I think, is option number 1 in his offense. Jalen Waddle's option number 2. But that's the offense you want to be a number 2 target in, right? One that, can put up 70 points any given week. Yeah, I think I'd rather add on to Jordan Addison to get somebody else that I feel more comfortable. I just want to make it abundantly clear that I'm not saying like I don't like Jordan Addison or anything like that. I don't have a problem with the player. I just don't like the value that people have him at for the production that I think he's not going to have. I just don't think he's going to put anywhere near the type of numbers to where his value is congruent to. So that's the reason why I'm not on the Jordan Addison train. If it was a little bit less and people were a little bit more realistic about their expectations, then I probably would be. But I'm very much a moniker for what we say on this channel. I don't hate players. I hate values. And that sticks true to everything about Jordan Addison.
I am 100% in agreement. You hit the nail on the head there with the just value not meeting the production I believe he's going to have. There's a discrepancy there for me. But with that said, we will roll right on into this next one here. So in this deal, in this format, we are looking at a super flex 10-team full point PPR 0.75 tight end premium start 12 league. And I looked at the details. This is not including defenses or anything like that or kickers. This is 4 flexes, 3 wideouts, 2 running backs, the tight end, super flex, and the quarterback. Maybe I'm missing a wideout in there. Either which way, there's a lot going on here with the start size, so that's pretty cool. But in this deal, I'm sending Drake London. Zach, you are sending DJ Moore in a 25 first. Is that a move you're looking to make? I know you are one that is vastly against the value and overpays with Drake London. So is this an overpay for you, or do you feel this is more on? Is this a move to make or not to make?
Well, let me do something here before we address that. I went to DLF for this trade. I input Team A trades DJ Moore and a 25 first. Team B trades, and I left it empty. And it gave me a bunch of suggested players. Now, let me name you these suggested players that it gave me, okay? Because your trade names me Drake London, who's done nothing his professional career thus far through 2 years, albeit given a poor quarterback situation and a defunct offensive coordinator that thinks he's a head coach. But the suggested players for Team B was Jahmyr Gibbs. It was Sam Laporta. It was Jordan Love. It was Puka Nacua. It was Breece Hall. It was A.J. Brown. One of those is not like the other, and his name is Drake London. That is a move I would not make. I'm sorry. I would so much rather have the DJ Moore and the 25 first. And DJ Moore is somebody I've been moving off of in most of my leagues. I am not about buying players. This is the same thing as Jordan Addison. I'm not about buying players at a value that doesn't exist for production that hasn't existed. There are certain cases where there are extremes to be made. I think one player that you could talk about in that realm is like Garrett Wilson, right? It's just been terrible around Garrett Wilson. And look, we can have that conversation another day. I see the comment section seething. I see the red in people's eyes right now, even though I can't actually see you, but pretend I do. But again, like the suggested list by DLF for that trade gave me all these players that have produced in whatever amount of time that they've played. So that is a deal I would not make. If I was doing that 2-for-1, if I was giving DJ Moore and a first round pick, I want guaranteed production. I know that we are projecting with Drake London, but we are projecting too much. We are setting ourselves up for a situation to where we are all disappointed again next year. Instead of being realistic with Drake London and say, well, his quarterback is coming back from an Achilles injury. Bijan Robinson is there. Kyle Pitts is there. I know nobody wants to say it. Darnell Mooney is there. There are other players. Rondell Moore. There are players all around in that offense that will chip away into Drake London's opportunities and target share. So all I'm saying is he's not going to be a top 10 wide receiver. That's all I'm saying. Like, it's not a big deal. He could be wide receiver 12. I don't know. I'd rather get more guaranteed production profile when I'm making that move, because I am trading a guaranteed wide receiver borderline 1 mid 2 in DJ Moore. I firmly believe DJ Moore is still a top 20 wide receiver, and I'm giving you a first round pick. I want a Sam Laporta in that deal. I want a Jahmyr Gibbs. I want a Breece Hall. I want something that I can plug in my lineup and not have to worry about, because I just gave you 2 very expensive pieces in my book.
I don't disagree with any of that, Zach. And honestly, like, you've highlighted that I would be getting the better end of this deal. And oddly enough, I still don't really want to make this exact deal because of what I have with London at this point. You know, DJ Moore's the boat. You know, he's not the mystery box. You know what DJ Moore is. Drake London has a boatload of upside. Enough talking about boats, Bob. But Drake London has that ton of upside that we can work off of. And maybe he does ascend to a better value, ascend to that value range of guys like the Garrett Wilsons, the Jahmyr Gibbs, the Sam Laportas that you discussed. So honestly, like, I don't know if I want to make this tier down to a player, but yes, I get a 25 first, even though it is a start 12, which makes that pretty appealing, because I got to fill out 12 starting slots one way or another, even though it's a 10 team. That's still a lot of starters I need to find homes for at some point, one way or another. I'm not looking to make this deal either. You know, if I'm tearing down off of London with where I know his value is for a lot of people at this moment, you know, I think London, for me, if I have him, he's a hold. I don't really want to move off of him. I don't think moving off of London, you get a great tier down option unless you're tearing down to players that, you know, maybe players are lower on London or lower on these players than London. You know, if Drake London is ahead of players like, again, to go over Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Brandon Ayuk, and you can tier down to them to get a nice piece, I don't hate something like that. Maybe a Nico Collins as well, whatever the case is. You know, it depends on what you're tearing off of from Drake London. But I just don't have a ton of interest in this, purely on the sense of not saying from a value aspect, like you touched on, Zach. I think it is a little bit much for Drake London to pay. But if I have London in this case, which in this scenario I do, it just doesn't interest me enough to move off of him at that price. So I'd be looking, like I said, to see where my trade partner has other wide receivers valued, and see what I can get on top of that wide receiver instead. Because there's only like such a viable range of what I want to tier down to because of Drake London's sheer upside. We can acknowledge he has a ton of upside. He can be, in my opinion, a top 10, as high as a top 10 dynasty or top 10 producing wide receiver with the target share I still think he's going to get. Do I think it's a locked and loaded thing that's going to happen? No, I think top 15 is very realistic. And then we can kind of see how his value goes up from there. That's the question, though. There are still question marks at the end of the day with the lack of production so far, albeit hasn't had the great quarterback play. Some people seem to still have question marks about the quarterback play that is coming, whether it's Michael Penix, whether it's Kirk Cousins. I don't care. That's another discussion I'm over. I think I'm just looking to do something else other than a pivot down to DJ Moore at this point. So that's another tough thing with Drake London, like Michael Pittman, another one I'd be kind of interested in tearing down to. I don't know if you get a 25 first on top of Michael Pittman. That's probably what I'd chase. But again, I think you need somebody pretty high on Drake London to do that. And I know there are, by judging the comment section, I know there's a lot of people out there. Hey, we're hyped for him too. We're finally going to get that best season out of him, I think. You know, the breadcrumbs to the breakout have been there. We just haven't seen it because of poor quarterback play and poor offensive coaching situations. I think this is a no-go on both sides of this one for me, Zach.
I want to break this down one more way. And sure. I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, but just
sure.
Ballpark it. Give me an estimated point range for Drake London in 2024. How many fantasy points? And I'll tell you, last year, this is a standard PPR league, 180 points, 2 years ago, 180 points. Last year, 178 points. Give me a projected point range for Drake London this season. Like, just ballpark it off the top of your head. Again, I know I'm putting you on the spot here. I'm trying to chew a few seconds for you so you can do that right now.
I appreciate it.
But I just want to see what you think, what you project Drake London's point total to be.
Yeah, give me 2 shakes of the sauce bottle here.
2 shakes of the sauce bottle.
Yep. All right. Looking at last year's stats, last year's finishers at wide receiver, I think a very possible scenario, and this might be low end because this player had a very good and very efficient yards per reception stat. I think we could see a breakout similar to what Nico Collins did last year. And that is all he did last year. All he did was 80 receptions on 109 targets. I think Drake London is locked and loaded for more than 109 targets, but he cashed in 1,297 receiving yards. He did also get eight touchdowns on top of that. But that was a 12th place finish. I wide receiver 7 in points per game because he did miss some time. But I think Drake London, we can see something along those lines where maybe on a points per game basis, he's a little better if he misses some time, whatever the case is. But I think that's pretty realistic. Like I said, I think he gets more targets, maybe less efficiency, maybe less yards per reception. But I think he probably ends up getting more receptions to kind of make up that ground as well. I think that's a pretty realistic outcome for what Nico Collins could be, or I'm sorry, for what Drake London could be. Or you could look at somebody like Michael Pittman, who had a ton more targets, 156 targets, only brought down 109 of them, far less yards per reception with 10.6, and a lot less touchdowns, half the touchdowns with 4. I think between those two, I think you have a pretty good parity of what Drake London could be this year between target count, reception count, yardage totals, and touchdowns, and things of that sort. I think he's pretty set somewhere in there. But you do have other guys that are coming up the pipeline too. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Brandon Ayuk maybe could be pushing in that range as well. Devonta Smith could be coming back for a wide receiver 1 finish in Kellen Moore's offense. So, I mean, it's not even that like Drake London is bad. It's just that there are so many good wide receivers that if Drake London misses a beat, goes on a cold streak, whatever the case is, Kirk Cousins misses a couple games and Michael Penix comes in and isn't perfect. There's just a lot that could happen with this team, but I think that's pretty realistic. Somewhere in the realm of Michael Pittman and Nico Collins, quote unquote, breakout last year, I think is a pretty fair guesstimation for what that could be.
Just for the practice of what I'm trying to do real quick, and I'll wrap this up. Michael Pittman and Nico Collins, I'm gonna just say they scored 260 points. Michael Pittman scored 250. Nico Collins scored 260 points last year, right? Let's just say that DJ Moore this year drops down to wide receiver 20. Wide receiver 20, okay? Last year, wide receiver 20 scored 227 fantasy points. So the difference between what we're projecting Drake London to be and what DJ Moore probably is very safe and comfortable to be is about 30 points, which is about 1.5 points per game. So there's no way on earth I'm paying an extra first-round pick to get an extra 1.5 in my lineup. I know that this disregards age, it disregards start size, but there's an element of fantasy football and dynasty fantasy football where we have to look at the immediate impact. And the immediate impact of this trade is I'm trading a guy that has a very safe floor and a first-round pick for a guy we are completely projecting to be great. And I just don't do that. I don't do that's not my process in dynasty fantasy football. I'm not trading you a first-round pick to get 1.5 points more a game. Not how I do things.
Would you do a 25-second instead of a first?
That's probably more appropriate. I prefer the floor of DJ Moore as opposed to paying up for Drake London, who could be great, could not be great. It's been a lot of projection ever since he was a prospect.
But moving along, enough Drake London talk in the books. We apologize for just kicking that hornet's nest as much as we do. But hey, man, you got to do what you got to do, I guess. But in this next one, we are looking at a format of a super flex league, 12-team PPR, 1 tight end premium, so a full point added on top of a PPR point. And at start 11, I'm sending Achane and a 25-second. Zach, you are sending Chris Olave my way. I love this deal. This is the first one I'm doing, and I'm like, yes, please. I'm all about it. Please, Zach, give me Chris Olave at the cost of Achane in the second-round pick. Zach, what do you think about this one?
I get frustrated with Achane because I see these deals on these shows we do, and I'm like, oh, my God, I would love that. And then I take over, 3-4 orphan teams that have Achane. I cannot get a deal like this done. This feels like it's happening in Madden only. Like, this is not happening in real life. I would not make this move. I would not. Chris Olave is my boo. You know that. I'm hoping that he takes a step forward this year. And this has nothing to do with the value here has nothing to do with that. It's more so of what do I think in reality is going to happen with Devon Achane? Devon Achane is a very good running back, but he's very small. He's very injury prone, and they've made a lot of investments in pieces around Devon Achane in terms of competition. Raheem Mostert gets an extension. They bring in Jayden Reed. They spend a 3rd-round pick next year to go up in the draft and get him this year when they didn't have a draft pick to get him at all. So that's a pretty big investment to get a player when you don't have a draft pick. You send one next year and in a round ahead. Just on paper, this doesn't seem too far off in terms of is it fair, is it not for both sides? But I would much, much, much rather have Chris Olave than Devon Achane. I'm a big, I'll figure out running back one way or another, but I don't need the superstar running back. And if you even want to label Devon Achane that, but I prefer to, in this scenario, take a chance on the superstar wide receiver.
What would you need on top of Achane to do this deal? Is it a veteran wide receiver like a Calvin Ridley or an Amari Cooper? Is it something like Tank Dell? Maybe you send a little bit on top since it's Tank Dell, a younger wideout as well, who produced in flashes last year. What do you need on top of Achane to get this deal done, Zach?
Just shooting off the hip here, Bob, and I want to make sure I don't advocate people to do this. This feels very slimy to do, but you're asking me to trade for a player that I don't really want and give away a player that I really love and covet. So to me, you have to make this almost over the top a little bit. Can I get a 1st-round pick instead of a 2nd-round pick with Devon Achane? I know that's asking a lot. I admit that that's not fair value. There are some situations where if you really want this player from me, you're going to have to pry them from my grip. And the only way you do that is not with a fair market value. Again, I'm not advocating for that. You asked me. I didn't ask you what it takes for you to buy Chris Olave. You asked me what it takes to buy Chris Olave, so that's the answer.
Oh man, Zach, I was hoping. I threw out players that I had on my team in Rewinders versus Patrons, hoping to get a deal done with you on this one because I wanted to get Chris Olave off your team, and I wanted him back home where he belongs with
hands
me.
Off, baby, hands off.
Man, I was hoping you'd take the bait, but I'll take it, I guess. But yeah, overall, I'd love to make that deal, but I do acknowledge that it most likely takes a little bit more. But man, I've seen, and this is probably what you're experiencing in your leagues, where people are on very different sides of the fence with Achane at this point, and I think what has gone wrong for him this season or this offseason is nothing on his part, but they go and draft Jayden Reed. They go and extend Raheem Mostert. And it was supposed to be wheels up for Achane. It was going to be his backfield. And then, an offense that was possibly looking like it was going to be the Achane show and nobody else now has 2 more running backs in the backfield, although one of them was already there. So it depends on what side of the fence you have, whoever you're selling Achane to, what side of the fence they're on, if they believe in that he's the next coming and all these, big games are going to be there, or if, we see some injuries like we saw last year, being a bit of a smaller back, being used in that way. I think with Achane, you're going to have a lot of, limited usage weeks. I don't think he's going to have a ton of big usage weeks, and that's okay, but you're going to be relying on a lot of efficiency from Achane, which isn't the worst thing, but not something I necessarily want to have. In your case, you're sending Chris Olave. You should be getting a running back 1. If you're getting a running back, you shouldn't be, and I think it was more than fair for you to ask for a 1st instead of a 2nd on that deal, because you need some sort of certainty coming back with that gets you in that range. And Achane's valued right now, looking at Keep Trade Cut, the running back 7 on Keep Trade Cut right now, which is a little high for my liking personally, and he's ahead of a running back we're about to go talk about. Moving on to this next deal here. Format is a Superflex League 12-teamer, PPR scoring, start 11, no tight end premium. Zach, I'm sending you Jonathon Brooks. You're sending me Kyren Williams because you're such a nice guy. This one's actually a bit interesting for me. I'm not going to say exactly what side of the fence I'm on at this point, but Zach, is this a move you're making or a move you're not making, sending away our boy that we share custody of to me for Jonathon Brooks? What do you think, Zach?
I don't feel that in this deal I am sending Kyren Williams to you. I feel like I am sending him to Nate with this value. This is terrible value for Kyren Williams, and he's trying to pull a fast one on me. No, I'm not doing that. With the production I saw from Kyren Williams, I don't have any doubts that maybe he's not running back 2, but his production level is not going to fall very far off. I love all the people freaking out about the foot problem that he was having as the
He's already
Rams are now
back.
the Rams are
Already
pumping
back.
out videos of Kyron back. Like,
Yeah.
no, man. No, I'm going to need more to do this deal. I think what would get me close is a future second round pick on top of Jonathon Brooks, because I do respect Jonathon Brooks. But 1-for-1, absolutely not. Not only does the rule of Bob say never do a 1-for-1, but I'm also not selling the running back 2 last year, one of the most efficient running backs one of the more efficient running back seasons we've seen in the last few years. But I'll take Jonathon Brooks and a future second for Kyron Williams. How about that?
I think that's about right. I might ask for a third back in that deal, because I think the move to make with Kyron, if you have him, especially if there is any concern, instead of selling Kyron, because you're selling at a dip now because of all the question marks that are being thrown around after Blake Corum was drafted day 2, go buy Blake Corum. Go buy him for a second round pick. Go, see what he was drafted for in your rookie draft. If you haven't had your rookie draft yet and you have Kyron Williams, go find a way to get to the pick that drafts Blake Corum, like I did, where I have Kyron Williams in the league. Because whether I, believe in Kyron long term or not, which I do ultimately, but he's had injury issues. And he already had one this offseason dealing with a foot issue. He's back now. Everything's good. But he's had injury issues. If you have Kyron, you should protect yourself by going and grabbing Blake Corum almost by any means necessary, not sending a first round pick or anything crazy, but get in the DMs, ask about getting Blake Corum, because that's the right move to make here. I think Jonathon Brooks and a second for Kyron Williams and a third is probably pretty close to fair value. If I can't get the third, darn, I'm going to, cry myself to sleep about it. But I like to try to extrapolate that little bit of value back if I can. And like you said, Zach, don't trade 1-for-1 at the same position without a kickback, because whoever sent this deal to you, if they send Jonathon Brooks for Kyron in your inbox, all they're saying is, hey, I'd rather have that running back that you have right there. And if that's the case, they just told you how they value that player. And they're saying that player is worth more. So they need to kick back more on top of the player they're sending to you. So 100% love this. And I'm in on Kyron, and I want to go buy Blake Corum if I have him, if I need to. That is 1,000,000% a backfield monopoly I would love to just get all of. So with that said, we'll move right along to this next one, looking at the formatting for this deal. Superflex League, 12-teamer, PPR 0.5 tight end premium. It is a start 10. I'm sending you Jayden Reed. You're sending me a 25 first, Zach. We also had this in the comment section. I don't know if they went and made this deal. I said it's hard for me not to send Jayden Reed for a 25 first. As much as we don't 100% know what that draft looks like, getting a first for Jayden Reed feels pretty good, because at the end of the day, that Packers offense is very ambiguous. And as much as I love Jayden Reed, and I think he, either way, no matter how it shakes out, he is going to factor into that offense. A quote came out this week that I think it was Jordan Love saying that we don't necessarily need a wide receiver 1 because we have so many good pieces. We're just going to keep spreading the ball around, which is great for an NFL offense, but not as exciting for a fantasy offense. So that's something to think about too, that, and I'm not, hinging everything on that one thing that was said, but fact of the matter is there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. When there are exciting pieces in offense and you can't decide which to go buy, the answer is probably just go buy the quarterback. At this cost, I'm happy with making this move. I don't love making the move because I love Jayden Reed, especially with where I was able to draft him last year. Zach, I'm going to kick it to you now that I've taken up the first minute of this conversation, maybe a little bit more. Is this a move you're making? Because it takes 2 to tango, Zach. What are you thinking about this one?
This is finally one on the show sheet where I get a player I actually want. Wow. Thank you, man. Holy crap. Yeah, this is what it would take. Me personally, if I was selling Jayden Reed, I would never take 2 twos. It would take a first, maybe even a first plus a little something. I think this is probably the fairest and the squarest deal. Now, don't ask the Dontavian Wicks truthers that are coming out of the bushes all over the place. Apparently, he's the coolest thing since sliced bread. He's the Packers wide receiver 1. Don't ask those people if you send a first for Jayden Reed, but I think I would, based off what we saw last year, and kind of we saw a bigger sample size of the things that he was able to do well in college. We saw them translate into the NFL, and I see no reason why we can't at least expect that plus more from Jayden Reed moving forward.
Speaking on Dontavian Wicks, though, I think there's some. I wouldn't spend a lot to go get him. Like I picked him up in our C2C startup in like the 14th round or something like that. I wouldn't spend a lot to go get him, but I think there's some real fire behind the smoke of Don Wicks. And I'm not saying he's a wide receiver 1 or or anything like that. But I think he could be a viable wideout in that offense, especially with how those tight ends shake out. Who knows if either of them really become fantasy relevant or at least impactful? Who knows? But I think looking at Don Wick's profile, I call him Don Wicks. I don't think anybody else does, but the Don, that's what we're calling him. I'm calling him. But, not a great college profile. Missed the 2020 season, skipped the 2020 season, had a very questionable 2021 season, I believe it was, or 2022. I don't remember. I'm getting them mixed up. But he missed the COVID season, had a really good season. His junior year, his senior year was not great. Terrible quarterback play. And, honestly, looking at my production profiles, I had one of the really good junior years for players and just fell off the list after a terrible follow-up to that season. But I think there's some, like I said, I think there's some smoke to that fire with Don Wicks. Like I said, don't go do anything crazy for him. Don't let that factor into your Jayden Reed valuation. I think Jayden Reed's biggest competition is Christian Watson, and Christian Watson's biggest competition is his own hamstrings. But either way, I like this value as well. I think this is about right. This is enough to make me move off of Jayden Reed. So we're going to move into our last one here, and this is shouting out one of our Discordians. So this is Liam's trade, in which he received Trey McBride. So you are the anti-Liam in this deal. I am Liam in this deal. Shout out Liam getting to the Bob treatment, I guess, whatever the heck that is. But in this deal, I am sending T. Higgins. I'm sending the 24-301 and the 24-411 in this Superflex 12-team PPR 0.5 tight end premium start 10 format. And I'm pretty happy to be getting Trey McBride on this one. I am a fan of this deal. I like this deal all around. Liam shouted this out in the Discord pretty quickly that I was a fan. Zach, is this something you're willing to do for T. Higgins? I know you're kind of a little aloof to T. Higgins' value too. You're not a super huge fan of him, but what are your thoughts on this one? How will we square this deal up if it needs to, have any value shifts? Does it need to be a second with T. Higgins to go get Trey McBride and a tight end premium? Is it square as is? What do you think?
I don't think it's square as is. I would definitely like to be on the Trey McBride side, which of course I'm not because you hate me on the show sheet for whatever reason. But I will say it's not too far. Right. I like T. Higgins and the 301. That's pretty close to the tier break. I was able to get a lot of Jermaine Burton at the 301 area of my drafts, which is you're kind of then almost guaranteeing yourself the Bengals wide receiver 2 if you're able to do that. But I want more than the 411, maybe a future third instead. That's just a total dart throw. If I could get a current top half of the third, I do that. Or if I get a future third, I do that. It's not terrible value. It's only a half-point premium tight end league. Where I really start to value McBride is a 0.75 tight end premium league where I'm really getting a premium on his receptions. I do think there's more competition in his offense, not only with Marvin Harrison, but they bring in Zay Jones, they bring in Trey Benson. That's 3 new offensive pieces that are going to take away work from Trey McBride. They really what do they lose offensively? Rondell Moore? No, they just added 3 pretty solid pieces to that offense. So Marquise Brown, who in the second half of the year last year, when Trey McBride was ascending, wasn't a big focal point of the offense. So I do think they brought in more than what they let go in that offense to take away a little bit from McBride. That's not to say I don't like McBride. Like I said, I'd rather be on the McBride side of this deal. But the other side is not too far off. If I could get another third-round pick this year or next, although this year I'd prefer if it was a top half of the third. Next year I'd just take a third-round pick, and I'd make that deal.
I like that a good bit as well. So this was a new way to look at the moves to make videos. We're going to bounce around with this topic and maybe bounce between doing the classic version where we each bring some moves to make. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let us know in the comments if you did. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. And if you want to make more moves with us, there's 2 ways to do it. Get in that Discord free trial for 1 week. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Let us see what we can do for your team. And if you want that much more in-depth help with your roster, check out the roster review option in the pinned comment below, as well as the YouTube description. But with that said, Zach and I are going to get the heck out of here. We will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.